I'm Rebecca Costa, sociobiologist and author. And on today's program, we're going to talk about how to get ready for flying cars, cryptocurrencies, and NFTs. What's an NFT? A non-fungible token. Never heard of it? It's time to get ready. It's time to get ready by institutionalizing reconnaissance and innovation in your organization.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, he's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Before we start, I want to mention to you a new podcast. No, it's not mine. It's one hosted by a guest you may have heard on Curiosity Bites if you listen to that show, but she's also the guest today on this show. Her name is Rebecca Costa. She's the preeminent global expert on the subject of fast adaptation. To put it bluntly, this is a must-listen-to podcast for all of my listeners because Rebecca has assembled 14 of the top subject experts in the world to go direct, to become a direct conduit between the public and the people who really know the most about disease, space exploration, financial markets, technology, and so on. The show is called The Costa Report. It is impossible to listen to this and not learn something that you've likely never heard anywhere else before. This podcast will have you shaking your head and wondering, why isn't everyone talking about this? The name of the podcast, again, is called The Costa Report. That's C-O-S-T-A, Costa, The Costa Report. And I urge you to go to the Costa Report website or go to RebeccaCosta.com and listen to one of the few free episodes that our guest, Rebecca Costa, has made available to you as a loyal listener. And again, you can simply go there, and I promise you, you'll thank me later. I want again to thank you right now for joining us on this particular episode of Leadership and Loyalty. Let me ask you, what do you need to do to up-level your leadership? Well, wouldn't it be nice if you had a crystal ball to look into the future? Because actually, there's a lot of change that's going on and a lot of change that's going to happen a lot faster than you expect, more than I expect, or most of us expect. If you don't know how to adapt fast, there's a pretty good chance that your business is going to go the way of the dodo. So stay tuned because that's where we're going on today's show. I'm your host, Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything by transforming meaning into action. Curious to know more? Simply go to dovbaron.com. That's DOVBARON.com. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. Alvin Toffler, he's a very well-known futurist, made a profound observation when he said, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And 150 years ago, Charles Darwin said, it is not the strongest of the species that will survive. You know, people make that quote, oh, it's the strongest, the species that survive. That's not what Darwin said. What he said is, it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent. It is the most adaptable to change. So how can we develop fast adaptation? Well, that's where we're going. We're going to find out together because our guest today is Rebecca Costa. She is a highly acclaimed technology and science futurist. Rebecca Costa's landmark work has been heralded by global thought leaders in innovation, business around the world. She has been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, NewsMax, USA Today, San Francisco Chronicle, and other leading publications. She is the preeminent global expert on the subject of fast adaptation and the recipient of the prestigious Edward O. Wilson Biodiversity Technology Award. Rebecca reveals how AI and predictive analytics holds the key to solving dangerous and systemic issues and offers unique scientific perspective on the headlines of the day. Her first book was called The Watchman's Rattle. It's a radical new technology. In this radical new technology of collapse, the book was a runaway international bestseller, and her follow-up book is titled On the Verge. It was introduced in 2017, again, to massive critical acclaim, shooting to the top of Amazon's #1 new business releases. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me to welcome sociobiologist, futurist, and best-selling author Rebecca Costa. Welcome.
Wow. Talk about an introduction. I'm not going to climb on that pedestal. I'll break my neck falling off.
Well, let's get ready to rumble. I'm always such an honor to have a conversation with you, Rebecca. I really appreciate you coming on the show with us. I know you're a busy lady. You've always got so much going on. And now with the Costa report, I want people to go and listen to that. But let's start here. In the context of leadership development, one of the things that I notice all the time is I'm asked to come in and speak and to solve problems. And oftentimes the questions they ask me are not the right questions. So I can give them an answer, but it's not going to be the right answer. It's going to be the answer to their question. So my question to you is, in the context of development, what's the question that we should be looking to answer that we're not, that we might even be ignorant of?
Well, we live in a time where the more attention you focus on what's happening right now, the more you're likely to miss the next opportunity and the next great disruption that can endanger your business. So when people are asking me to come in as a consultant, similar to you, and they're asking me questions about what's happening right now, in many ways, it's just distracting because my real job is to get them out ahead of what's about ready to happen. Right. I need people to understand that the days of being a speedboat and learning about a technological change, a process change, a new regulation, and then thinking that you're going to make a right-hand turn and that all the other boats behind you that you're leading are going to be able to make that right-hand turn successfully are gone. Right. We are now, the bigger your company gets, the more successful it gets. You're like an ocean liner. You've got to start making that right-hand turn miles ahead.
Yes.
There's no turning on a dime. And things are moving so quickly right now that companies really think that, we just learned about something. By the time you've learned about it, you're already late to the table. The opportunity cannot be maximized by the time you hear about it. So the real questions that people ought to be asking is, what does the future look like? What's going to hit me 5 years from now that I need to start making that turn for now, right? I need to prepare my organization because, as you know, I don't like the word disruptive.
No.
Disruptive means you weren't prepared for it. It slammed you up the side of the head, and now you're reacting, right? I mean, the only way to manage a disruption is reacting. And I don't like that. I like evolution. I like to evolve an organization into the future. And that means I need a longer runway path.
Okay, so let's look at that for a minute because, like you said, there's so many changes coming. And as you said, people are caught in the present and whatever particular political or otherwise chaos is going on. However, they need to look into the future, but I find that most people don't know what to look for. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So, you and I talked about this on Curiosity Bites. So there's all this stuff around how the pandemic was a black swan event. Nobody expected it. Yeah, they did. They talked about it at Davos. They talked about it at other events. The Obama administration prepared for it. They knew it was coming. And we also know there's a bigger one coming. We know that. But yes, how do we pay attention to what is coming to get that fast adaptation? Because I think that you're right. Everybody's in reaction.
The very first and top item that I teach is to institutionalize reconnaissance. You need a formal reconnaissance function in your corporation, in your business, in your nonprofit organization. Because without reconnaissance, when you think about military reconnaissance, we don't march all our military into a dangerous area where we have no info.
No.
We send advanced troops to get information and bring it back so that the troops know what situation they're walking into. I know this sounds very basic, but when you think about reconnaissance, about the kind
You're not talking about a time machine where we're sending our employees 6 months or 5 years into the future.
What do you think we do now in terms of reconnaissance? I'll be really honest. Most companies, what reconnaissance involves is sending a few employees, not even 1%, like 0.00001%, right? To a trade show, to an industry trade show, where what do? They walk up and down the aisles and collect the free bags and tchotchkes and hope they run into something that might be interesting to their company. And then they come back and try to explain the something, and it doesn't go anywhere.
No.
It doesn't go anywhere, right? This idea of going to a trade show once or twice a year and hoping you bump into something that might affect your industry or make you more efficient or more profitable or give you a competitive advantage is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And so with many companies that I work with, we perform, my group of 200 researchers around the world that I'm networked with, we perform the research for them. We are the reconnaissance for them. And so we go into their organizations and say, well, what are the areas that you want to know more information about? And they carve out those areas. And then we watch provisional patents all over the world. We go to the trade shows and vet every single vendor there as a match or no good. We look at where venture capital money is going. Who's got money? Where are the venture capitalists investing heavily and not investing? What kind of research is going on in major university institutions? And is there a way that they can lock some of those in by funding the rest of lock in the ability to license exclusively by giving funding to those universities? So we're watching all of those things and then coming back and saying, all right, here are 5 matches for you. You ought to lock these in, prepare your organization, license or buy these companies. These changes are going to happen. Not maybe, not if. We're not actuarials. We're not calculating, hey, there's a 30% chance. We are bringing to those companies, these are the things that are going to happen in your industry, and you can either lock them in and get ready for them and start making the turn now, or you can hear about them 5 years from now when it's way too late.
Right.
And you're reacting to it. And it's been very successful. And I'm talking about large global companies that have no reconnaissance at all, have no idea what's going on in other industries.
But that's part of the challenge, isn't it?
If you're in the agricultural industry, you should be looking at what's happening in ER departments in healthcare.
Right.
Because when you cut a head of lettuce out of a field in a remote area, you have a patient that is dying. Now, you may not think of it that way, but you ought to be thinking about it. You ought to be looking at the systems that emergency rooms use to try to get the patient to the emergency room in the best possible condition so that it can live. You got the same problem with agriculture. Might sound very different, but it's not. It's the same industry. You've got a head of lettuce. From the moment you pull it out of the ground, it's dying. And now your job is to get it to the grocery store in as good condition as you can.
Yeah, I think that's part of the challenges that we often, I mean, you and I talked about this in before, which is that in the world of niche, everybody's put blinders on and they go down that aisle. And I'm concerned about it because I'm not talking about being a generalist, but I'm talking about hopping out of your niche to see what's going on that is relatable. And oftentimes people are quite ignorant about those things. But in this context,
and that's part of reconnaissance.
Yes.
Part of reconnaissance is looking at patents and things that are going to come and where science and technology is being funded.
Yes.
But a whole nother part of it is looking at other industries, right? For what you can adopt to give you advantage.
Yeah, and I see that. So let's just say for a second that the listener, our viewer, is not ready for your company and your organization, and they go, okay, well, where do we start with reconnaissance? What would be the simplest thing for them to start on their own and say, okay, here's what you would do. Here's where you start the ball rolling.
Pick one person, right, and give them that as a real job.
Right.
Just, assign them.
So go find out what's going on in the industry or what's going on for change in the world.
And bring that information back into the company, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't institutionalize innovation,
right,
then let me give everybody a litmus test on how innovative your company is. It's a really simple one, and I think everyone will really like this. So I often go to boards and the top level of corporations, and I ask them, how low in the organization, right, is someone authorized to say, no, we can't do that. We're not going to do that. I said, how about the receptionist? Can she say, no, we don't do that? We can't do that. They said, yes. I said, the security guard, the janitor, can they say no? And they say, yes, they're empowered to say no. And I go, okay, well, how high up in the organization does somebody have to go to get a yes for something new? They want to start a new program. They want to get new funding. And generally, it's just below the CEO. It's at a vice presidential level.
Right.
So what I want people to understand is every day, thousands of times a day, the organization is saying no, 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 can't. And a few brave souls are going to climb to the top of the Himalayas and put their job on the line, right, to try to get a yes.
Right.
One yes.
Right.
This is why corporations are not innovative. They're not innovative because everyone in the entire company is authorized to say no, and only the VP level is allowed to say yes. Maybe a few directors, but I don't even find directors have that authority.
Yeah.
They have to go way to the top and sometimes even to the board.
Yeah.
And so you go, well, why is that? Why do I say you have to institutionalize reconnaissance? Because corporations are like humans. We're very Pavlovian.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever made us successful in the beginning becomes institutionalized.
Yes.
Right? We produced products a certain way. We produced services a certain way. And that is our legacy on why we got successful. And as that got reinforced and reinforced and reinforced, it's very hard to change. The bigger the organization and the longer it's been around, the harder it is now to come up against that institutionalization that was rewarded all along the way. So the company is systemically moving in a certain direction. And so everyone is trained to say, no, 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 don't do anything other than the things that have made us successful. Now, here's the catch. They do that and they behave that way, even when what they've done before stops working.
Yeah, because they think there's something's going on, but this has always worked for us, and it'll change and it'll come back and it'll work for us. No, it won't. No, it won't. It's already dead in the water. And you know, I think it was Marshall who said that if you're doing what you did to succeed yesterday and you're hoping you'll succeed tomorrow, it's a recipe for failure. I mean, you know, it's just, there's no way you can succeed.
Right. But companies get into a momentum. They institutionalize what made them successful. And this is why, if you don't institutionalize reconnaissance, if you don't institutionalize innovation, if you don't put systems and assign personnel to it, you have nothing to counterbalance that forward and deadly momentum.
That's a really great point. Thank you. You know, I want to bring in something in here because, you know, you're talking about institutionalized, you're talking about, you know, and I talk about this in all kinds of ways, and I know you do too, which is the culture of an environment is what I say is permission. A culture is nothing more than permission. It's permission to do or permission not to do. And what I explained about that is that every one of us is in a culture, and it's not just a culture of our work. We have a home culture, a family culture, we have national cultures, all the rest of it. And it's fascinating for me, the work you do, because you were born in California, I believe, and you were raised and educated in Japan. So there's very different cultures. And now you're this, you know, you're a Silicon Valley futurist, which is a very different culture again. I imagine, I'm making that up, I imagine from being educated in Japan. Talk to us a little bit about what that was like, because you would have had to innovate yourself culturally.
I had to adapt.
Yeah.
I had to adapt. I went from what was the best education system in the world. I had calculus in third grade.
In Japan.
I mean,
wow.
I went to the best education system in the world, right into the Vietnam War. My father drug all of us into Laos and Cambodia, which were waging war at the same time the US was involved in Vietnam. He worked for the CIA, and he thought, coming from an Italian Portuguese background, the family should stay together. I mean, as an adult now, I realize that was insanity on my father's part. But
hold on, we've got to keep the family together, so we're going to go into a war zone. Well, no, actually, let's go into a couple of war zones.
I'm going to take my family into a war zone. That this is literally, and it wasn't just war. People were dying of dysentery, malaria, I mean, the diseases, whatnot. Be that as it may, my dad bought a compound with tall walls and had literally military people standing at our gates with guns, you know, automatic weapons 24/7. We lived in this compound, and we went to an embassy school. So I had to adapt because I went from downtown Tokyo to the jungles of a war zone, and from there to the United States because my father wanted me to attend a US university. So plopped right into Santa Barbara, UCSB, Surfer Town, USA.
That's a little different than Japan or Laos. Talk about adapting.
Yes.
Who am I? Hello. A little punch drunk from that traveling.
But I had one thing going for me, and I'll tell you what it is. I'm a very astute reader of humans. I've always been able to know I have a good nose for liars and people that are deceiving me. I believe all these environments, the common denominator where humans are humans.
Mm-hmm.
You separate culture, you separate education levels, you separate accomplishment, achievement, all of those things. And humans are really humans.
Yep.
And so I was always adapting to other human beings. They were other college students, or they were people at the US Embassy in the middle of a war, or they were, my Japanese colleagues. So, the common denominator were humans. And I think that is what drew me when I was at the university to studying evolutionary biology. I wanted to understand what makes humans human, and why do we adapt the way that we do, and how do we adapt, and how did we become the top of the living pyramid?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about it, millions of years, and we move, and millions of life forms, all the way from, amoebas all the way to mammals. We're the top of that living pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me was a fascinating journey with a lot of opportunities for humans to become extinct. When you think about it, 99.999% of all the living organisms on the planet are not here anymore.
Right.
And yet we thrived in that environment.
Yeah, and that's
fascinating. That's in our DNA. So for the leaders that are listening today, everyone's DNA carries some capability to be a leader and a pioneer and a risk taker.
Yeah, but I'm really interested in this how, because you're talking about fast adaptation. Nonetheless, when we are marinated in a culture like the Japanese culture, and then finding yourself in an American culture, I would only imagine those would have very different criteria of how one sees oneself and sees success.
Yes, in Japan, you're thinking about group. Everything is group success. It's national success. It's community success. It's the success of your family. Mm-hmm. You are very deferential. I spent the majority of my career concerned about the success of my boss and my bosses and my company. Right. I really didn't do a good job of looking out for myself.
No.
And as a woman executive, it wasn't like people were looking out for me either. Right? They were happy to have me be in a supportive position.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was I was a very popular employee amongst my bosses, because I would go to the nth degree to make sure that they were successful, that they looked good, that they had what they needed and more. And I was extremely loyal. And I would sleep under my desk to make sure they had what they wanted. But what took me a very long time culturally to understand was I needed to look after myself. And mm-hmm. when that kicked in, I left corporate America and started my own company. It was only when I finally figured out that my path should not be groupthink and supporting everyone else, but that I could be a leader myself.
Yeah, fascinating. We are already at the end of part one of the show, and it's always a joy talking to you. So before we end this part of the show, we're going to come back in one click to part two. But before we do that, I want everybody to find out where they can find out more about you and about the Costa Report and how they can reach out or tap into the resources that you have. Could you tell them?
It's very easy. They can go to our website. That's my name, Rebecca Costa, COSTA.com.
Okay, so if you go there, and of course, we will make sure that all the links to Rebecca, to the Costa Report, to social media will all be posted in the show notes. We're going to tap out here for part one. We'll be back with part two of our delicious conversation with the eminent Rebecca Costa. We'll be back in just one click, so stay curious, my friends. Stay curious.